Hey, you, Nina here. You are officially listening to Triggered. Can we play with that? And on today's episode, before I even tell you what we're doing, if you have not followed me on Instagram already at Drama Therapist Nina, consider this your official invitation. I've got all the reels, all the goodness, all the timely stuff goes out on Instagram. But while you're here watching or listening, let me tell you about today's episode. We have Hince. Now, Hince is going to talk about freedom, okay? Freedom specifically from your trauma, okay? One of the saddest things that I will hear from someone consistently is the belief that they will never be free from the worst things that have ever happened to them. Let me release you of that notion now. You 110% can be free from the pain, right? From the struggle of some of the worst things that have ever happened to you, if you are willing to process through them. Now, of course, that sounds like not so fun, but trust me, when I talk about courageously leaning into your emotions and getting yourself the freedom that you need so that you can live your best life, it does not need to be dark and scary and heavy. We can absolutely play with that. So, grab a friend or a good friend to journal with what comes up for you in this episode. You know that we're not going to be able to touch on all of the facets, but we sure are going to be able to touch on a few, and we definitely do in this episode. So before I say anything else, you know that I'm curious. Are you ready to play?
Welcome to Triggered. Can we play with that? You know that moment when your emotions ramp up in an instant, leaving you feeling helpless, frozen, or out of control? In that moment, you've been emotionally hijacked, the very definition of triggered. And I want to ask you, can we play with that? I'm Nina L. Garcia, drama therapist and empowerment coach of Houston Creative Arts Therapy. Join me as we discover ways to empower you and the people who mean the most to you to transform hard conversations into teachable moments. Triggered. Real playful, real respectful, real empowered.
Let's take a breath. So, welcome everyone. We do have special guest Hince here to chat a little bit with us about triggers. But before I invite Anne to introduce herself, I want to set the intent for this episode. Y'all know we're playing with triggers, so we're setting out to have a human to human conversation, right? Last time I checked, I was still human. And still human? Excellent. Right? Human to human conversation. And it's designed to empower, right? We want to respect all of the narratives that are present. And so this means our goal is to transform hard conversations into teachable moments. It might get sticky, it might get uncomfortable, but I am consenting to go into this space with you. And if I don't like something, I'm going to say it, right? And with respect. And I want the same for you, Anne. Do you consent to go into this space with me?
Absolutely. It sounds great.
Let's do it. So, Anne, tell us a little bit about yourself. I like to say, how would you locate yourself in the world with whatever identities or roles that just feel important to you today?
Okay, I live in California. I'm from England, conceived in New Zealand, and have lived in many places around the world. And I'm a wife and a mother, and I've written a book, and I'm sharing my story.
Oh, thanks so much for that. I love the tapestry of imagery that you just offered us. Thank you so much for that picture. Okay. It is internal weather check-in time. Before you share the story with us, check in with that internal weather. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling excited. I did have COVID this last week, so I'm a little croaky still, but getting over it.
Okay. A little, and then if I love to ask this in such a creative way too, if your internal emotional space was like literal weather, like it's sunny or rainy, or you were lost at sea, like now you sound pretty good. What's the image that you would ascribe to that?
I would say the weather that is here today in California, which is pretty nice and calm.
Nice and calm. And do you have like cool breezes there?
Yeah, we have in the last few days. So yes.
We're super humid over here in Houston. So, okay. We've got nice, cool breeze. Realize it's a nice day. Okay. The title of your moment, let's get to it. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. The title of your moment was "This is not normal," not with all caps. Are you ready to share your story, which you wrote? You are hoping will help people recognize that, we have triggers, we can notice them, seek them out, and release them. It does not have to be a dangerous thing, even if it's scary, right? It does not have to be as scary as we think it is. It is possible. Are you ready to share your story?
I am.
Okay, I'm ready to listen.
Okay. So we could start at that place where this is not normal. And that place was my late 30s. And I had almost a business altercation with a couple of other mothers at school who were very self-assured, self-confident women, authority figures to me. And I was not. I was this fearful mother, and they had told me I'd done something wrong. And I was very triggered. In fact, my mind just started spinning out of control, and it took several days. I just kept going over and over what they'd said and what I'd said and what had happened, and I couldn't sleep for days. And I realized that I don't think this is normal. I don't think most people would react this intensely to what had happened. And that's when I realized, it feels a little bit like how I would react when my dad would tell me I'd done something wrong. So to me, that was like the opening of an inkling of something maybe I needed to look at from my childhood that I hadn't looked at yet. In fact, I haven't looked at anything from my childhood, really. So that was the opening for me. And it was in that time frame, I don't remember how long, but sometime after that, I actually went to a doctor's appointment. I don't remember why I went. It certainly wasn't anything to do with my emotions, but I recognized I was more stressed than I should be. And he was a holistic physician, so he had more tools. And he asked me on a scale of 0 through 10 what my stress level was. And I said it was an 8. And then he asked me why. And it was that question that made me realize, oh, it's finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor when I was 19, which was now 2 decades earlier, because the tears were still just under the surface. So he would use this technique with me. It's called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. It's also called tapping. So he tapped with me for about 15 minutes about my mother's death, about finding her. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story of her death in my mind without the tears there anymore. And that was the first time I realized that we keep those emotions and those traumas physically stuck in our body, and that we can release them. I had no idea at that point that was even possible. So I went home that day. I learned how to use EFT. It was given away by Gary Craig for free, so anyone could go online and learn how to do it properly. And I did that, and then I wanted to check it out. I had an engineering background. I wanted to know it worked.
You wanted to know.
Absolutely. I didn't want that to be a one-time fluke. So I had a 17-year-old cat at home at the time who'd just been told he needed to have a daily saline shot. So I had to give him the injection. And the first time I did, my hand was shaking so much, it was ridiculous. I was not going to be able to do it every day. It was just too scary for me.
Yeah.
So I checked it out. I tapped about every aspect of it, about my hand shaking, about my fear of hurting the cat, and about all my history, my memories around all the injections I'd had, because we'd lived all over the world. I'd had many. And the next day, when I gave him that shot, the needle just slid right in. All that fear that had been sitting inside my body had gone. Yeah. And that's when I realized 2 things. I realized that EFT is deceptively powerful, right? It doesn't look like it's doing much, but I realized, okay, it really is. And I realized that the freedom is on the other side of that fear. And that's where I want to be. I want to get to that place. So that's when I started using EFT every day. I started noticing when I was becoming emotional or when I was triggered. And I would catch myself in that moment. I would tap about it, use this technique EFT. And as I did it more and more, I became more and more aware of when I was triggered. And I started to become peaceful on the inside. And I wanted more of that. So I wrote down every emotional memory that I could think of from my childhood, which was several pages of notes. And I tapped through one each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night.
Mm-hmm.
And as I went through this period, it probably took a couple of months maybe, but I just found myself becoming more peaceful on the inside, which was always my goal. And at one point I remember opening my kitchen door and saying, it feels like I'm living in a different reality, because those voices in my head, the words that I used to criticize myself or judge other people, they weren't there anymore. And I didn't even know that was possible. So I just kept going along this process, and I realized what EFT is doing is opening up the subconscious mind. And as that happens, the awareness expands. So I started to become aware of my emotions during the day, which I hadn't been prior. And then I started to become aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions.
Yes.
Right? Because we'll use the word like sadness or anger, but what we're really describing is how we're holding that tension in our body at that time.
Yes.
So I started to become aware at that level. At that point, I didn't feel like I needed to use EFT as much. What I wanted to do was actually feel those feelings, feel those sensations. So I taught myself how to do it. It sounds like it should be really simple. Just feel your feelings. But they've been suppressed for so long, they didn't know how to be felt. So what I realized I had to do was actually hold myself like a statue. I had to stop. I'd find that tension. So for me, it was fear most of the time, and it would be in my stomach. So I would notice that tension in my stomach, and I would hold myself like a statue, and I would stop breathing. I wouldn't take a deep breath. I'd actually stop breathing where I was in my breath when I could focus on that tension. And I would just talk to it. Like I can hear you. I mean, I can feel you, fear, sitting there in my stomach. I just want to feel you. I just want to feel you. I don't want to hide you. I don't want to suppress you. I just want to allow you to be felt. And at some point, I'd need to take a deep breath. And there would be a slight shift in that tension or that fear. It would dissipate slightly. So then I would do it again with the same thought. I would think the fearful thought again, feel that fear, and allow it to shift. And I would do it again and again with the same thought until the fear had dissipated.
Yeah.
And then I would start doing this instead of tapping during the day. And then at night, instead of going through my childhood, I would now lie on the sofa and I would bring collective traumas to mind, like 9/11, right? We all have our own experience of a collective trauma. So I would feel all those sensations inside my body, just allow them to be felt, and they would shift. And then I would do it again and again and again. And at some point during this process, I realized that I could keep my awareness inside my body after the tension had dissipated, which was really weird. I'd never heard of it before, didn't know it was possible, didn't know what I was doing, in fact. I was just playing. And the only way I could really kind of, what was that?
I said, so you thought, right? It was just playing, but it is like deceptively powerful, I think was such a good way you put it. But go ahead, I'm going to talk in a minute.
So the only way to really try and explain this is imagine you have a toothache or stomach ache. You can feel where that pain is coming from, right? You can put your awareness on that pain. But once the pain is dissipated, you can't find it anymore. You can't place that place inside your body anymore. I found that I could keep my awareness inside. So then I started playing with it. Well, if I've done it once, can I do it again? And I found I could. And then what can I do once I've done it? So I realized, okay, well, I can move my awareness around inside. So I would do that. And then I realized I could find a place that had tension. And then I would hold my awareness on the tension, just like I was doing with the physical sensations, and it would shift. So then I would do it again and again and again, and it would release. But now I'm inside the body, as opposed to EFTs working on the emotions and the words and the things that happened. Then the physical sensations is working, on the kind of the outside of the body a little bit. And now I'm right inside the body. So I just kept doing this more and more. It took many, many months, but eventually I got inside my head, which was a little weird,
We just keep going, right? I'm going to break this down in a second. For all you listeners out there, like, wait, we're on a train, right? There's lots of different towns that we are going through on this train. Stick with us. We are going to break this down in a second. Keep going.
Okay, yeah, this is the last step. So once I got into my head, became aware of all this pain and tension in my head that was unbelievable to me, that I have lived 50 years at this point and had no awareness of how much tension I had inside my head. So I would just work on this a little bit at a time because I had that tool now. I could focus on it and it would release. So over time, I would actually feel my skull bones relax into what I now know is a more aligned position, but it just feels like a deep relaxation because I'm letting go of dis-ease on the inside. So I had this x-rays taken last year compared to 2013, and I can actually see that the bones themselves have shifted. The eye sockets have aligned. My jaw, which was way off to the side, is now more centered, and my neck is a lot straighter than it was. I've got more work to do, but I've grown 1/2 inch as a result of this releasing of dis-ease on the inside.
Yeah. Incredible. The journey you just described, Anne. Thank you so much for taking us on that journey.
You're welcome. I want people to know that it's possible because I didn't know it was possible.
There's so many pieces that I could address, right? But I think that even just the idea you just said is something that's so critically important, because I don't think we're really taught to believe that it is possible. It's like, oh, something terrible happened to you and you should keep talking about that and, like, deal with it and you should hold on to it. I think there's a narrative out there, and I think it is a dominant narrative, I can say that personally and professionally, that suggests that you should hold on to your trauma. And I think that the body has a natural way of saying we should hold on to this because if we have it, then that means it can't get us again, right? Which is, of course, not true. It's not how that works, right?
Right.
If only it were, but it's just not how it works, right? It's a beautiful illusion. And so as you take us through this, I am definitely hearing, and I hope that, y'all watching and listening out there can see that it is possible. Anne's not the only person to do this journey. Our last episode talked about a journey like this. I have talked about my own journey with this several times, right? With trauma and processing it. But and one of the ways, and I want you to fix this if it doesn't sound right to you, tell me, right? But one of the images that sticks out to me when you talk about, and you're like, and I just kept going, can I play with this? Can I play with this? And I say that often to clients, can we play with that? Can we play with that? And what I'm asking is, can we lean into that? Like, can we look at that a bit differently? Can we maneuver that and engage with that in a different way than we have been? Instead of holding on to it tightly and keeping it in our bodies, can we be like, can I just, like, oh, what happens if I just, oh, whoa, now I'm not feeling it there. Now I'm feeling it over here. And, oh, I'm, maneuvering it and whatnot. But what I will explain to clients is, I said, what I believe is that this is a skill that we're practicing, and that the skill that we're practicing is courage. It is the courage to lean into something that feels in your body dangerous, but actually is not. It just feels scary, right? Dangerous is when there's something that is a threat, right? Scary is perceived threat, right? And if we can keep leaning in, what we're doing is we become more courageous. And so I loved, as you went through your story, you described, I started with ruminating, right? We had the moms, right? At the very beginning of the train in the story, we had the moms and those intense moms. And you described yourself as a fearful mom, right? And then you said, but what I realized was, as I ruminated for several days after this, right? That's that thought process where it keeps coming back, I keep thinking about it. I'm ruminating, right? It's like, y'all, that is a definite flag. What Anna's described, that is a flag, right? We want to think, why am I ruminating on this? What's happening here, right? And Anne, you had the self-awareness, thank goodness, to say, like, pause, this isn't about these moms, right? This huge reaction emotionally isn't about these moms just in this moment. It's about all the times I have had a power differential, right? An issue with, what was the line what did you say your dad said? That something was,
whenever he'd say I'd done something wrong.
That you had done something wrong, right? And then we get into, Brene Brown does a little bit of work on this, right? The difference between guilt and shame. I've done something wrong versus I am something wrong. Like, there's something wrong with me. And how big that can become if we don't lean in and process the trigger of, no, wait, maybe I did something wrong. Well, maybe I didn't do something wrong, and somebody is putting their own stuff on me, right? Now, who's to know, right? We didn't really go into if you felt like you had done something wrong or not, but we're talking about a moment in your 30s that was actually from material from your childhood that you then process through in your adult life. I'm going to repeat that back. You can process through something in your adult life that happened in your childhood. Yes, please, and
Absolutely.
thank you. Right? That is the majority of people coming into my office period is this is what happened to me in my childhood. And now it's affecting me, right? Or now I'm noticing how it's affecting me, right? And so here we have Anne, folks, super courageous and right, discovered, leaned in, was like, I'm feeling stressed out, right? Then you mentioned, which we didn't get to go into much detail on, right? About finding your mother in such a position, right? Which I don't even know that I could even imagine that, right? The emotions and the turmoil and the stress of that. And so the way that you had described it imagery wise was you had said, it was the tears were just beneath the surface still. What an image that the tears are just beneath the surface. And I think what a gift Anne offers to you all listening and watching, because I want you to ask yourself right now, do I have something sitting in my body in which the tears are just beneath the surface? Because what an indicator that is of there's a place we could lean in and play with. There's a place I could get a little bit more courageous with to release this from my body. Now, you went in and you did EFT, which is incredible, right? I've heard so many stories of this, right? And one of the things you kept coming back is there's all this emotion that's stored in the body. There's all this emotion that's stored in the body. And one of the things that I will offer people is I'm like, y'all, this is not magic, right? Emotion is not like from some like tree creature who's like, let me put this emotion in you, right? And other people are not like, let me put this emotion in you. Emotion is energy that must be expressed. That's what it is. Just like potential and kinetic energy, it is a type of energy that exists in the body that gets stimulated by things that happen in the environment, right? It expresses itself in a particular way. I think one of the emotions you had said was fear, right? You talked about sadness. Emotion is an energy and it must be expressed. If we do not express it, it will find a way to hijack us and express itself. That is what a trigger is. It's the emotion that's been sitting there and it's just waiting for somebody to push that button. And then it's like, here I am. Let me tell you all the things we have to be worried about. Okay. And here's why we got to be worried about them. And here's what we're going to do. Right. But here you are courageously leaning in with the EFT, with all the different pieces that you did to check in with the body. And then I'm just going and going because you just brought so much golden energy in here and with just so much knowledge, just so much goodness. Then you go further, right? And it's not just, oh, I'm doing the tapping to get into my body and get connected with my body and reconnected, right? And figure out what these spaces are and courageously go into them. Then it was, now I'm developing such a sense of intuition, such a sense of trust in myself and what I'm feeling, and an ability to listen into my body that I have. Oh my gosh, there is a word that we actually use in the therapy world, but I can't remember it right now. And what it essentially is a greater self-awareness. I want to say proprioception. I could be wrong. In any case, nobody cares about that word. Sorry, y'all. I digress. So in essence, to say, there is a little psychoeducation nugget I want to drop here. Is it okay if I do that?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. And forgive me, y'all. There is clearly some construction happening in the background. I can hear that. I don't know if y'all can, but I'm pretty sure my mic's going to pick it up, even if you can't, Dan. So the little psychoeducation nugget that I want to drop is when something traumatic happens to us, if you can imagine, that we all have this river of life, right? I've got a river, you've got a river, everybody's got their own river, and we have a boat. And in that boat, right, maybe sometimes it feels more like a float, maybe sometimes it feels like a yacht, maybe sometimes it feels like somewhere in between, right? Depending on how easy our life feels at the moment. But regardless of the boat that we're in our own river of life, if nothing terrible or bad ever happened to us, we would be able to go all the way to the right in that river and all the way in the left. We could experience 100% of what life has to offer, and we'd have no hangups. But when something like a little T trauma happens, it's like rapids. It's like we hit rocks in the river and we just like, I just got to get out of this. I just got to get out of this, right? And maybe we use some tools, but it's ideally a temporary thing. Maybe those rapids come back down the stream, but ideally we get out of the rapids, right? It's a temporary thing. We had a hard time. It was a seasonal thing, and then we move on. But when big T trauma happens, the stuff that sits with us for our lives longer than we want it to, it sits with us. It's like a vortex in the river. And what ends up happening, of course, with vortexes is it takes up so much of the river, and it feels, everything that gets closer, it feels like it's just going to get sucked in. So instead of 100% of the river now, we're like rocking 30% of the river because a vortex is taking up 70% of the rest of what we could experience. that we no longer feel safe experiencing because we feel like we're going to get sucked into that trauma again. And this imagery is partially from Peter Levine's work with trauma. Just for anybody who wants to go look up some resources out there on this one. But I add this creative spin to it because the reality is just what you did, and the way that I would describe what you did to clients is that 70% of that vortex, every time you leaned in with tapping, every time you leaned in with a memory, every time you leaned in, it's like going a little bit into the vortex and then coming right back to the space where you know it was safe. And then you go right back, and all of a sudden that 70% that it was taken up, now it's like 65% and 60%. And slowly but surely you get to experience more of life again, because more of life feels safe again. I mean, when you say freedom, I'm like, yes, it's freedom. But we got to practice courage to get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love what you'd said, all of that. So I want to add to that. Let me just say one of the things that I really realized along the way is the energy, the emotions. It's just energy that's stuck inside the body. That's how I kept thinking of it. It's just stuck inside the body, and it wants to find a way out. We just have to allow it. So EFT did that at one level, feeling the feelings did that at another level.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right.
Yes.
As you release the burden of the past, life just gets better. It gets better and better. And there is so much more depth to life than I ever knew was possible, which goes along with what you were just saying about the river. I didn't know there was so much depth to life, right? Because as I know myself at a deeper level, I know everything that's happening around at a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so much more satisfying than it was to live in that fear in the past. So as I went through this journey, it just felt, it feels really good to let go of energy that's been stuck in the body for decades, right? That's got to feel good.
Oh, yes.
Right. So things improve along the way. And I think that's part of the story that people forget. They think it's going to be such a long journey and it's going to be tedious. And it's like, well, there's a lot to the journey, right? You've got to look at all the stuff that's hidden away, but it's just stuck energy. Mm-hmm. And things improve as you go. Life gets easier, it gets more fun, and it's absolutely worth doing.
Oh, yes. So much. Yes. Right, folks, I'm just gonna play it back to you. What Anne just said. It's stuck energy, right? Emotion is energy that must be expressed. If you do not find a way to funnel it, it will find a way to hijack you, right? This is predictable.
Right. So, now, that doesn't mean to express it to someone else, right? It doesn't mean to be angry with someone else, right? It just means to feel the anger and to allow the anger to express physically from the body, but you don't want to push it onto someone else.
Now we're talking about projection, right? This is like, oh, let me just put my feelings off onto you so that I don't have to deal with them, which is very different, right? So right. I love this. We'll do the 30-second piece on this now. I love it when we get nuggets. Right. So when we say emotion is energy that must be expressed, that does not mean, Anna is like, this is just highlight this moment, y'all. Such an important piece. It doesn't mean express it however and whenever you want to without thought, right? The energy must be expressed. It can be done so unintentionally, or it can be done so intentionally, right? Unintentionally expressing your emotions is what leads to trauma mastery patterns, which is like you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we talk about that a little bit, actually, for y'all who've listened to the previous episode and Bo Bissett's episode. We talk about the trauma patterns that keep coming back, right? There is a reason to disrupt them, and it's called liberation and freedom, right? So intentionally disrupting them and intentionally finding a way that is healthy for you to express them cannot impress upon you the value of this. If you want to be able to experience more of that river of life, more of what is fulfilling to you, more love, more depth, right? That was the word that Anne used, and it's such a beautiful word, depth of life. If you could have more depth of life, would you want to? Right? That's the question that I would ask everybody to ask themselves right now, right, Anne? Is like, if you had the opportunity to try different things, and maybe it's EFT, maybe it's NLP, maybe it's drama therapy, right? I will never say it's just drama therapy, come see me, right? It is getting in touch and being courageous in a way that suits you in your body in the context of your life. And this was it for Anne. And like, could it be it for you, y'all?
one thing I would like to point out is like,
Yes.
we're not always aware. We don't know what more depth to life is
Yes.
because we haven't experienced it. So keep an open mind that there is more depth to life that you don't know yet. And are you willing to search it out? Right? Because we think where we are is the only place to be. We don't know that there's more available to us. So that's why we're here sharing this information, so that you know that there is more that you can find in life, and there is more depth to life.
There is more depth to life. What a line. We are nearing the end of the episode, Anne. And I am curious, what are our takeaways? What are you sitting with? Of course, we always set out to have hard conversations and to transform them into teachable moments. What's sitting with you?
I think I love to share about how we can take responsibility more for what's happening around us than we think we can. Where we often blame other people, we blame politicians, or we blame other countries, or we blame other people for something that's happening. And my experience has been our part of anything that's happening is how we feel about it. And we have control over how we feel about something, right? So if we're watching the news, or we're listening to someone argue, or our spouse has said something that we don't like, we don't need to blame them. We can work on our feelings. And when we change our feelings and we come back to peace ourselves, then we're going to change our future. So that can be as simple as taking a deep breath. Or it can be learning something like EFT and actually tapping out those feelings and coming back to peace. But that's where we have control, more control than we think we have.
Yeah. One of the lines that I love to offer from what you just said is that control what you can control, right? And there are more things that we can control than we are thinking about, right? And so I know that a lot of people listening will hear what Anne just shared and think something along the lines of, oh, so you're saying that I should just be peaceful and like never speak, never be angry or never. I can hear that because I've heard it before, right? Let us clarify now, right? And Anne, if you feel differently about this, that's okay. You could let me know in a second. But what I will share for all of you who had that thought is it's not about being a Zen peaceful master and saying that nothing is wrong with the world. It's about knowing at your core that you may be an ocean of calm so that you can directly and clearly say what is wrong, what is not working for you, and that you can then make shifts in your life without expecting somebody else to change or expecting somebody else to make the change for you. It's about being so clear and free within yourself, right, to the best degree that you can, that you feel confident and empowered enough to make the shifts in your life that need to happen for you to be aligned with yourself.
Okay, let me
add your own piece.
Something there too. Yeah. So I'm glad you said what you said. Yes, it's absolutely not about suppressing the feelings that we're having. My whole journey has been about accepting the feelings that I'm having. So one of the key things about EFT is actually it's working on releasing mostly the negative, right? I've realized it's the negative that's stored in the body. That's the tension, the dis-ease inside. And with EFT, with the tapping, we're actually allowing those negative thoughts to be felt, allowing those negative feelings and emotions to be felt.
I mean, I'm strong enough to feel those, Anne.
It's scary sometimes. Yeah. But as soon as you fully accept at any level, right? So each level I was fully accepting the emotions or whatever happened, right? Finding my mother, fully accepting that whole series of events. And then with the physical sensations, just allowing them to be felt. I'm not trying to suppress them. I'm just allowing them to be felt. And as soon as there's total acceptance there, that's when the shift happens. So even with the EFT, like I would work in allowing my emotions. So if I hated something, I would feel that hate because I want the hate out of my body. I don't want it stuck inside. So I can accept that I hate something.
Let it pass.
That's when the shift happens, right? So I actually spent a lot of time, probably hours over a period of days or weeks, actually tapping. And I don't recommend this to begin with, but I've done a lot of work at this point on the fact that I hated myself, right? I just tapped on, I hate myself. I hate myself, and just allowed that to just be felt until there was no longer any feeling there. Now they're just words. I can say that and it doesn't have any emotional pull inside of me anymore.
Neutral space.
Right. So absolutely, right. That's what the tapping does. It allows you to feel those feelings, let that energy go, and then you come to peace. And when we're in peace, that's what we're attracting into our future.
Audience listening, if you could feel your feelings and find peace, would you want to? That is the question I will leave you all with for the upcoming week before our next episode. But we are going to bring this one to a close. It has been quite the journey. And I want to pass it over to you. I want to check in with your internal weather. This is the checkout. If you go back in and you look at that weather scene that was one way at the beginning, what's it look like now?
There's a nice warm breeze.
I love the shifts. I love the shifts. A nice warm breeze. Thank you so much for being with us. And where can people find you if they want to reach out? I want to hear about the book, the website, all the goodness. What you got for us?
Okay, I did write down my story and all the steps in a book called A Pathway to Insight, because I believe this is the original meaning of the word insight, the ability to see inside the body. And you can find that on Amazon or wherever. You can ask your local bookstore to order it. I also have a website, Hince.com, and you can see the x-rays on there. So see what we have the power to do. And I have a YouTube channel that has a demonstration of EFT and a demonstration of feeling your feelings and some other videos on there that you're welcome to watch. And I have a public Facebook page that I'd love to interact on.
Yes. And thank you so, so much for being with us. Of course, I will have all of that in the show notes, so nobody has to worry about they missed it and they need to rewind. I got you. Just scroll down to the show notes. And otherwise, that is what we planned for today, folks. So thank you for taking a minute to explore your triggers as a human being. And if this episode has been helpful in any way, shape, or form, my invitation to you is to share it. That is the best thing you can do to pay it forward to yourself and to someone else, to keep leaning into your triggers, right? Keep exploring, keep getting courageous. Just share the episode, right? That's what helps people find this work when you do that. Otherwise, thank you so much, Anne, and everyone else. Stay curious.